your engine. So we should just be thankful for that. But the main things we should see is our engine. Our engine is a main component of the car that if you have no engine, then the car is useless. Like, for example, your brakes in it are safety features, but brakes, like you can delay suspension parts. But if you don't change your oil on your car, the car is worthless because it can cause severe damage to the engine if you're not doing your regular service and your regular checks. And the main checks that you should do in winter season, because now the daylight is ends very early, like at about 5:30. So the first thing you should do is to check your lights to see all your lights is working, because maybe you're coming home late from work and the lights, if your lights aren't working, can be a hazard on the road. So that's the first thing I would suggest. Also, you leave in early where the sun didn't yet rise. So check your lights, check your brake lights are working, your headlights, and your indicators, because it would help other people on the road. The next thing is
One thing I
to
want
check
to just
your...
ask Abdurrahman, if you don't mind, and maybe Yusuf will also
No
come
problem.
in here. Well, I know personally, I used to do this with my fuel-injected vehicles and turbo diesel cars, leaving it to idle for at least 2 or 3 minutes after startup. Get the motor running, get the oil running throughout the engine and the battery as well. Yusuf, do you do the same as well? I know many people do that. Do you as well?
I do leave it to idle, but I mean, we're talking about obviously trying to keep the car warm, especially
Look,
morning.
we know
I'm
you
assuming.
sit idle. Right?
Yeah, no, you gotta
You
be
are
idle.
idle.
You gotta be idle. You gotta let the car idle. But I'm assuming that the heat is gonna be lost at some point.
Yeah.
So let me tell you guys something interesting that I actually read and been itching to say this, and maybe Abdurrahman can also tell us a little bit more about this.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was this article.
But we're talking about cars, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's 100%. Not funny though. But anyway, so one of the things that I read, and it says one of your ways that you can keep your engine warm, one of the ways to keep your engine warm, is to place an electric blanket over your engine, and it's called a Sunbeam Micro Plush Heating Blanket.
A brand.
I kid you not. I'd love to show you this. I don't know if Abdurrahman ever heard about something like this. I was stunned when I read this. Let me just be honest, but the proof's in the pudding.
No, I don't think I've ever...
No, it's on temperaturemaster.com. Okay, so
yeah. So when I saw the segment, and I said, let me just do a little read up.
maybe if you're living,
And I was
something
surprised
near,
actually to see that.
What's that place near Sutherland, towards the Cape? It's very cold.
Maybe something like Alaska or something, really cold places. You need. I don't think that'd be required for something like South Africa. It'd be quite drastic.
Yeah, I think.
But it was an interesting read there. You find everything on the internet nowadays, guys.
Yeah, but anyway, okay. So if you didn't know, now you know, guys. You can warm your car up using, or maybe somebody at home had this thought, and maybe he's thinking, I'm gonna look like I'm, ludicrous, and maybe. Yeah, well, they could do this. But anyway, Abdurrahman, you were still saying before we got a tip about heating blankets on the engine. I don't know how that's going to turn out.
Electric blanket.
Anyway, I was talking about, leaving the car, idling for at least 2 or 3 minutes for warm-up. Many a times we notice, obviously, in the winter season, cars are very cold. So, and also to charge the battery. Wouldn't you agree for that?
Yes, of course. A
But
battery,
is it
you must
effective in
understand.
doing so? Or is it?
No, it is effective. It is effective. I wouldn't say that it's not effective, but it's often more difficult for a battery to operate in cold weather than it is in normal warm weather. So, yeah, you can say it is, but the main thing is to check your battery also, because you must know that it takes
So how
longer for the
often
car
would you
to start.
advise somebody to check their battery?
Look, if you're not having any problems with your battery, then once every service, they do check your battery. If you take it to a proper service center, they do check your battery. They test when they tell you your battery life, let's say it's like 60% or 50%. They do advise you that if it's below 50%, that you should change it, because then you don't want to be stranded one day in case you leave the lights on and
100%.
it drains the battery and then you're stranded because you can't start the car.
Absolutely.
So it
absolutely.
is
I'm actually just
advisable.
wondering if Sarfaraz checked his battery of late. Sarfaraz?
Well, I had a replacement done, I think, about a month and a half ago.
Okay, so
After about 4 years.
so you say your cells are all in order?
Yeah. We are wireless and yes, but
And
we
fully
are
charged.
yeah, alhamdulillah. We've got a solid connection here. We're running 5G. Yeah. Now, the next talking point about car kit-ups, I mean, obviously being ensuring oil is present inside, covering every nook and corner of the engine, right? Obviously, as you mentioned, Abdurrahman, in the intro. But there are decreases of level of wear and tear in the engine in winter, I'd say, because with the lack of heat, obviously when it's much more hot, your engine's going through a bit more strain. Or would it work the other way around?
Yes. No, it is correct what you're saying. Like there's more wear on the engine in winter because of the temperature. Also, I forgot to mention the other important thing is to see, but like in our country, it isn't such of a worry because we don't have this -10 below the temperatures. Is to check the coolant on the car because, like, for example, if you don't check the coolant, then you only have water in your cooling system. It can damage your engine if it's really cold. Let's say one day you come outside and it's snowing, that your engine would freeze up or ice up and can expand. Water expands once it freezes and it expands the engine block or the certain components in the engine. So that is a good practice to check your coolant.
Right. So
and top up
antifreeze
if
is
necessary.
the first thing to obviously look at.
If you don't have antifreeze, you should balance it out with the correct ratio. Or now you can buy they have a ready mix one, where it's already mixed with water and antifreeze. They said.
So gone is the days of that Winds mixture and the old school methods. Winds stop smoke, and I don't know. It was a heavy situation back in the day. The trouble.
Yes, 100%.
Now, let's say, with the decrease of the wear and tear, right? Obviously, the flow of the oil to the various parts of the motor, which is fantastic, right? In this situation, it's best to obviously leave the car idling, as we've already highlighted, right? It's one of the effective ways or it's a rather effective winter tip, right? Now, when it comes to obviously a well-established fact, right? As you mentioned, that heat is your car battery's biggest enemy, right? Now, if your car battery's charge is low or close to depletion, and many of the later model vehicles now with this maintenance-free batteries, obviously utilizing it, right? But what happens if the distilled water is freezing during this weather patterns that we face? Maybe your car is parked outside or you're driving through a very cold patch, whatever the case may be, for a long period or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I'm just asking. What are some of the primary signs of battery damage or malfunctioning of some of your electrical wear in winter now?
Well, the first thing you notice is, like, let's say you leave the car tonight and in the morning you come, you'll see either your car will battle to start or it will have like a long crank time or it won't start at all. And then you think something's wrong with your car, but in the meantime, it's just your battery. Another sign could be
I've had plenty of those issues, actually. Yeah, 100%. Now I'm finally finding out why I was not cranked.
That's why you were so cranky.
That's why I was so cranky.
Anyway.
No. Another sign is it could be that, like you said with the electronics, like your electronics will just go crazy. Like you'll see when you start your car, it will just, some lights will come up on the dashboard, and then you haven't seen those lights in your whole life, and then you'll just realize that what
little logo there, the electric blanket light for the cluster.
Yep.
I think we must make one.
Put one for the battery also. Keep it warm.
I mean,
if they're making one for an engine,
no. I mean,
the least they can do is put one
for foresight. I mean,
100%.
I'm thinking ahead. I mean,
like the earmuffs.
Yeah.
You know.
I think
No one thought about the earmuffs at one stage.
I think we must patent this. Wait, we shouldn't even be on air right now.
And I'm an attorney. Let's go. We shouldn't be here.
Now, obviously, Abdurrahman, you mentioned startup troubles, flickering lights, non-functioning cabin lights, right? Audio system, maybe some of the,
Yes.
how can I say, a co-indicator. But also it could be attributed to maybe a loose terminal or a fuse.
100%. Sometimes you have to check that. That's also a common problem, like in the workshop, and that you'll notice that you'll drive your car and then you'll see your battery's fine and you stop. Hey, the car is just dead. But then you just go to your battery and you say, hey, the terminal just came off. Then you just tighten it up and then you should be fine. That's why it's good to check also the battery bracket mount. You see, if the battery is tilted, it can cause damage on the battery. If it's not on a flat surface also.
Now,
And if it's not mounted properly,
I've noticed
the acid can leak.
Well, number one, and number two is maybe the bracket size and the battery is not matching.
Aligned.
Alignment there as well. Or maybe the battery size, maybe using a 614, 618 or 635.
Or 65.
F3 for, I don't know, whatever. You know, I'm quoting numbers now, but anyway.
I knew you didn't know that.
During winter, it's imperative, obviously, as you mentioned. To warm the car up. But many people, and there's a lot of motoring journalists, we have read articles where they suggest that the necessity of warming up the vehicle before moving is a myth. But from a mechanical background, personally yourself, right? You agree that it's obviously true that these components.
You see, it just depends now. If you have an old car or if you have a new car, the older cars in the olden days, they didn't have electronic fuel injectors, so it wasn't all like and that. So now with today's modern vehicles, they have electronic fuel injectors. So if you're gonna leave your car idling, you just gotta waste your gas, your petrol, and that you just gotta waste your petrol because these cars are made so clever these days that they will shoot extra petrol into the combustion chamber if it needs to be, because it reads the exact from the control unit. It reads how the engine is running with the temperature. Each car today is fitted with the outside air temperature, which reads the temperature and sends the information to the control unit, which will then tell the engine how to respond to that certain temperature. So if you have a new car, like let's say 2008 upwards, it should, maybe even more, 2005 upwards, you should be fine. You don't have to really leave your car idling for a few minutes.
Okay.
Well, if you have a diesel, it's always good to wait for the glow plug light to go off, and then from there you can start your vehicle.
Now, so we've highlighted 2 or 3 different tips, right? So one being obviously preparation. So obviously a preparatory checkup where you leave the car to idle and make sure everything's in order. The second one is that ensuring the battery health is optimum. Maintenance of the battery rather, and looking for some startup troubles, right? And another thing that comes to mind is what about the temperature drop on the tires? Because obviously the heat in summer and you're driving fast affects the tires wear and tear and longevity of a tire in a certain way and affects the pressure. Now, what happens in the winter season?
Well, in the winter season in our country, like I was saying, I was in Canada 2 years ago, and I was in my uncle's house, and I asked him, hey, you got a spare set of tires here? He's like, yeah, that's my winter tires. So, like, we're not used to that. Like, every winter, they actually put their winter tires on because of the snow and that, for the extra traction in it. But, like, in our country, it's not really necessary to put extra grip. It's just for extra grip and for less skid, because the roads are more iced up in those parts of the world, and that, so they need that extra grip. Otherwise, they'll just spin. The tires will just spin crazy. So really, with us in our country, it's not really recommended. It's just going to be a waste. But it's also important to check your tires if it needs to be replaced. Like besides that, if it's below spec, you will see that in the morning it will spin. If you have a rear-wheel drive vehicle, especially when you accelerate, and you'll see like you'll pick it up and it's a bit dangerous.
That's what we're talking about. Verpa. So obviously it's recommended you perform your tire pressure checks obviously more frequently than you would like normally. But driving with low tire pressure, it's got a better impact compared to a higher pressure, correct?
100%.
Because many a times people put like tire pressure right around maybe 2.5, 2.6 bars. I mean, some people put a normal 2.2. But then again, depending on the type of tire, the type of car, etc.
And passengers.
So, another thing that I think we were highlighting was head fog lamps, because now obviously in the season now there's going to be a lot of fog and mist, etc. So apart from the temperature aspect, another aspect that warrants for winter car care, I think, is fog. Early morning, in the evenings, whatever the case is, fog isn't a very common phenomenon every day, but when it's there, it's particularly common, right? And now, obviously,
Yeah, it's
during
like
the
extra
occurrence-
safety.
yeah, and then obviously it's a hindrance to obviously your visibility and for you being visible as well, and for other motorists in this regard. So ensuring your lighting system is in the best health obviously is fantastic. I think fog lamps, wouldn't you agree, they play a important role?
Yes,
Yusuf? I mean,
100%.
Well, they certainly help me see.
yeah, I mean nowadays I think all cars come with front fog lamps and rear fog lamps. I think it's a standard feature now. Before it was like a thing,
It was like a novelty.
like
You had to have it.
it's an extra. I got
Do you have
fog
it?
lamps.
Oh my, excuse me.
Yeah, my Corolla come with fogs, they say. It was nowadays it's like standard, it keep it in obviously keeping on safety terms. Now, let's say if you got an older car and it's devoid of a fog lamp, right?
Get better brights.
Well, okay, that would be maybe one, but would it be a perfect sense to opt for aftermarket lamps? If you
Yeah,
live in
they do make this conversion kit where you can, first of all, if you have an older car, you can get that LED kit where you put
that's what I
LED
wanted to
bulbs.
highlight, because I think it's very convenient. I mean, instead of now
No,
cutting into the
Yeah, 100%. Like it's actually the LED lights. They work really good. Actually, they really bright. Like if you see at night, it makes a big difference. And then you get these fits that fit like fake, not fake, but like an attachment of a fog lamp. So it clips at the bottom of your bumper.
It's
So it is like a
detachable.
conversion. Yeah, like a conversion. Like spotlight. It looks like two spotlights at the bottom of your bumper.
It's like you're attaching a floodlight to the car.
Yeah.
I love those things, huh? So for us,
Well,
it just gives it some.
I'm more of a
Oh, are you?
light. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I really like lights,
Well, what
Uh,
kind? What kind of cars does Abdurrahman like? Let's find out about that. I mean, we since we
we're
you know
talking a higher niche category now of vehicle when you talk with Abdurrahman. We're talking green side levels, yeah, boss.
Now we like now
beyond
Lambos,
I mean, we're talking now
Ferraris.
GLs,
No.
Maseratis, S. The 63S. He's being modest, but anyway. Alhamdulillah. Now, I think also another thing and an aspect when it comes to fogging, due to obviously the temperature difference between the cabin, outer and inside, this can be obviously removed, altering and minimizing temperature difference, obviously, which causes the occurrences in the first place, right? But a humidifier, I think, obviously a dehumidifier rather, and I think you get these portable ones. Many of the old cars, some of the dehumidifiers don't even work. When last has anyone even changed the pollen filter? Have you looked at that? Something so small.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You take that for granted, eh?
Some of us didn't even know there was a pollen filter.
Well, if you don't know.
You know?
Now you know.
You know?
You learn something new every day. Allahu Akbar. I should have been named Fuder.
Should have, would have, could have. You should have.
Anyway,
This guy is
now,
mechanical engineer.
so we've touched on that, and then how to remove fog from a car glass, I think, is very important, right? And I'll share this on our next car talk segment. But
Inshallah.
inshallah, I mean, Now, lastly, so we've highlighted now, I think 4 or 5 different things. What about the windshield? Because obviously, during the colder months, the fog and mist, and also a lot of the smoke from the felt fires, bonfires, informal areas, whatever the case may be, it's got a tendency to accumulate over the windshield, right? And obviously, this creates a lot of problems. So we've highlighted that point. Abdurrahman, what else would you like to share with us?
So speaking about the windshield, like sometimes you would notice, like let's say early in the morning there is like a thin layer of ice on your windshield. A good tip to get rid of that ice is just take a kettle with boiling water and just to pour it over and then leave it. And then once you're in the car, you can switch on the demister, and there is a fog feature on the newer cars where it will actually clear up the fog, and you'll see your windshield will be like crystal clear after that.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I think I'll have to start waking up a lot earlier so I can make sure I can take that tip. Otherwise, because I think that's one of the biggest problems that everybody faces is that with us having a lack of time, rather, let's put it that way. The hustle and bustle of going to work every day, leaving early, and having to make sure you do all of these things would essentially require somebody to start making this kind of preparation. So one thing would be, I would think, wake up a bit earlier. Yeah,
preparation. If you are working in the north, you should know you need to be out of the house by Fajr. Read Fajr Salah wa Jamaat firstly. Come and talk about.
Behind Mufti Sarfaraz.
With my Mubarak voice.
Allah Akbar.
Anyway, Abdurrahman.
From where to where the conversations
go. Unfortunately, and we bring a wrap to the car talk segment tonight. It's been great, great chatting with you. Just time management. We obviously need to manage the time. Yep. But inshallah, on our next segment, I'd like to have you in studio, and we'll do some in-depth discussions on the next car talk. Anyway, Abdurrahman Mia, you have a wonderful weekend. Salams to the family, and stay warm wherever you guys are. Keep safe.
Jazakallah so much for having me.
Thanks, man. Thanks for
you also keep well.
Assalamu alaikum. Well, if you guys didn't know, you can warm your car up with an electric bank. Who actually even went through what? Okay, so it's a thing. It's on the temperature something.com. I don't know. Look, I'll share the link to the site later. Anyway, it's 35 minutes after 8 p.m. We take an ad break. Coming up next is our Tech Talk segment. And we're going to be discussing with Jan from Ireland now what Microsoft have done. They've decided to obviously